I didn't cry at the funeral. That's what everyone seemed to notice, the stillness. My mother kept touching my elbow like I might tip over. My stepfather handled the logistics. My stepsister stood behind them, silent and wide-eyed, the way people look at furniture they aren't sure they're allowed to sit on. The only thing I remember clearly is the lawyer leaning toward me after the service and saying, "We'll schedule the reading soon. Your grandfather was very specific." Specific. I nodded. I wasn't thinking about paperwork. I was thinking about the way Grandpa used to leave the porch light on even in daylight, because he said a house should always look like it's waiting for someone. When I got back from the cemetery, my key didn't work. Not because the lock had been changed, because the door was already open. My room was stripped down to beige. The quilt my grandmother made, gone. My desk, gone. The wall where I'd taped postcards and old school awards was blank, wiped clean. A new comforter lay folded on the bed. Lavender. I stood there long enough for my mother to think I hadn't noticed. "Oh," she said, appearing behind me with a forced lightness. "You're back sooner than I thought. Where's my stuff?" "In boxes," she said. "Mostly." Some things were old. We had to be realistic. Realistic. She moved into the room as if showing it to a realtor. "She's had to share space for years. It's only fair. You barely hear anymore." I was 22. I commuted to school. I paid for my own books. I worked evenings. I was there. My stepsister hovered in the hallway, already holding a stack of folded clothes that weren't mine. "This isn't permanent," my mother added. "You'll get your own place soon." It makes sense. The word made sense repeated in my head like an echo in an empty house. I didn't yell, not because I wasn't angry, but because the anger hadn't caught up yet. I was still at the cemetery, still watching dirt fall on wood. I slept on the couch that night. The reading of the will happened 3 days later at a modest office downtown. My mother came, dressed carefully, lips tight. My stepfather kept one hand on her back like he was steadying a ladder. The attorney cleared his throat and read from the document. The house, my grandfather's house, was left to me. Not shared, not held in trust, not conditional. To me. There was language about ensuring stability, about preventing displacement, about my granddaughter's continued security in a world that moves her too easily. My mother inhaled sharply. "That can't be right," she said. "He would have talked to me." The attorney didn't argue. He simply turned the document toward her and pointed to the signature. Authority doesn't raise its voice, it just holds paper steady. Afterward, the attorney handed me a folder. Deed transfer instructions, contact numbers, a timeline. "If you'd like assistance with occupancy matters," he added gently, "we can provide that." Occupancy matters. On the drive home, my mother was silent. My stepfather tried reason. "You wouldn't actually uproot everyone," he said carefully. "That wouldn't be necessary." I looked out the window at familiar streets and realized something steady was forming underneath the grief. "I don't want anyone uprooted," I said. "I just want my space back." When we walked inside, lavender hit me again. My stepsister was sitting on my old bed, no, her new bed, scrolling through her phone. My books were stacked in the hallway, half crushed. I went to my room, the living room couch, and opened the folder. The paper felt heavier than it should have. That night, I didn't pack anything. I waited. 2 days later, the attorney came by. Not dramatic, not police. Just him in a gray suit, standing in the doorway with professional politeness. "I'm here to clarify the transfer," he said. My mother's voice sharpened. "You didn't need to come into my house." He paused, then corrected her gently. "It's no longer yours. Silence can hum when it lands right." He explained occupancy law, timelines, the difference between guests and tenants. He was careful not to threaten, careful not to inflame, just clear. Power doesn't always slam doors. Sometimes it carries a briefcase. When he left, the air in the house felt rearranged. That evening, I began folding clothes. Not angrily, not carelessly. I placed my stepsister's things into suitcases. I set them by the door. My mother watched from the kitchen. "You're choosing this," she said. "No," I answered. "I'm keeping what was left to me." My stepsister's reaction wasn't dramatic. She looked confused first, then embarrassed, then small. "I didn't ask for this," she murmured. "I know," I said. That was the worst part. She hadn't orchestrated it. She had just been given something that wasn't hers and told it was safe. My mother stepped forward like she might grab the bags, but she didn't. Something in her face shifted. Not fury, not apology. Calculation dissolving into realization. "You'd really put us out," she said quietly. I met her eyes. "You already did that to me." The next morning they left. There was no shouting, no slammed doors, just the scrape of wheels on pavement and the engine starting twice before it caught. The house settled afterward. I walked into my room again, and sat on the edge of the bed. The walls were still bare. The quilt was gone. Some things would never come back. Standing up hadn't fixed that. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steadier. There's a difference. I found one of Grandpa's old bulbs in the hall closet and replaced the porch light. It flickered once, then stayed on, even though it was mid-afternoon. The house didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, but it felt like it was waiting for me.